Hello. On Friday, you took the Graphing Quadratics quiz here. Your instructions were to graph each quadratic by completing the table. To be truly successful on that quiz, you needed to remember the difference between vertex form and standard form. When we first talked about vertex form, we identified it because we saw quantity squared. If we see quantity squared, that meant we were in vertex form and we knew what A, H, and K were right away. We just have to remember that H is always the opposite of what the equation says. Because we know A, H, and K, we know the vertex right away, and that makes it easy to graph. However, when we are dealing in standard form, we know A, B, and C instead of H and K. That's okay. We can use our vertex formula, x equals negative b over 2a, in order to solve for h. Once we solve for the h value using this formula, plug that number back in to each of the x's in the original equation, and that's how we find k. Once we solve for k, now we know our vertex h and k. Regardless of the form, once we figure out the vertex, from here we can make a table of values and graph. On the quiz on Friday, the first equation was y equals negative 2 times x plus 1 quantity squared. This problem is definitely in vertex form. I know it's in vertex form because I see quantity squared. Vertex form tells me that A is negative 2, H is negative 1, the opposite of the equation, and the K value has to be 0 since there's nothing here. It's plus 0. K is 0. Since I know A, H, and K specifically, I now know my vertex is going to be negative 1, 0. Negative 1, 0 right here on our graph. Also, remember that since we know the h value, we also know where the axis of symmetry is. That'll help make our graphs better as we continue on. On Friday, you just had to graph, so after you find the vertex, it's time to make your table of values. Always remember when you're making your table of values to place the vertex, in this case negative 1, 0, in the center of the table. Count up to complete and count down to complete the x values in your table. To solve for either side of our table, I'm going to use our shortcut patterns that we know. The first shortcut pattern says k plus 1a. K is 0 plus 1 times negative 2. Well, 0 minus 2 is negative 2. The second part of our pattern is k plus 4a. K is 0 plus 4 times negative 2, the a value. 0 minus 8 is negative 8. Negative 8 goes into our table. Now that I've completed my table of values, I can plot these points and graph. 0, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. Notice again that they are 1 unit away from our axis of symmetry. 1, negative 8, 2 units away from our axis of symmetry, negative 3, negative 8. 2 units to the left of the axis of symmetry. Now that I have all 5 of my points plotted, we can sketch our graph through those points, and we see a negative graph. Orientation is negative, it's headed down. That is being stretched out 2 times. The second equation on our quiz on Friday was y equals x squared plus 2x minus 3. This is definitely in standard form. Given that it's in standard form, we know that a is 1, b is equal to 2, c equals negative 3. Since we know a, b, and c this time, instead of h and k, we have to use our vertex formula, negative b over 2a, to solve for the h value. Negative b over 2a. Set up the formula and plug in the values. Negative 2 over 2 becomes negative 1. H is negative 1. Now that I know h is negative 1, I can substitute that value back into the original equation. Y equals x squared plus 2x minus 3. Substitute negative 1 and solve. Negative 1 quantity squared is 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2 minus 3. That gives me y is equal to negative 4, and that is our k value. Now that we know our h value and our k value, we know our vertex is going to be negative 1, negative 4. Plot that onto our graph right now. Draw in an axis of symmetry to help us with our graphing later to make it even better. Now that we know the vertex, we can complete our table of values. Again, make sure your vertex is in the middle of the table. Negative 1, negative 4 this time. 0, 1. Negative 2, negative 3 for my x values. Again, we will use our shortcut pattern, k plus 1a. This time, excuse me, k is negative 4 plus 1 times 1, since the a value is 1. Negative 4 plus 1, negative 3. Use the second step of our pattern, k plus 4a. Negative 4 plus 4 times 1. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. 0, 0 into our graph, into our table. Now that I've completed my table of values, we can plot our points and graph. 0 and negative 3. Negative 2, negative 3. 1, 0. Negative 3, 0. For good measure, I'll put 2 more points on our graph up here to make it even better. Connect all the points through our graph the best that we can to get a positive graph that is going up. Third equation on our quiz was y equals x squared plus 4x plus 6. This was the one we changed at the start of the quiz. It's in standard form. A is 1, b equals 4, c equals 6. Set up our vertex formula to solve for the h value. Substitute a and b accordingly. Negative 4 over 2 is negative 2. H is negative 2. Now that we have solved for the h, we can substitute it back to our original equation and solve for the k value. Negative 2 quantity squared is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 plus 6. Negative 4 minus 8 is negative 4 plus 6 is 2. Our k value. Now I know that our vertex is negative 2, 2. Plot that onto our graph, negative 2, 2. Insert our axis of symmetry to make graphing better for us. Now we can start and complete our table of values. Again, make sure your vertex is in the middle of the table. -1, 0, -3, -4 for our x values. K plus 1a. K is 2 this time. Plus 1 times 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. Insert 3 into our table of values. K plus 4a. K is 2. 4 times 1. 2 plus 4 is 6. Insert 6 into our table of values. Now that our table of values is complete, we can plot our points in graph. -1, 3. -3, 3, symmetrical on either side of our axis of symmetry. 0, 6. -4, 6, again symmetrical on either side of our axis of symmetry. Also note, also remember, C is 6. C is the y-intercept. It's another point to make our graph even better to help us go faster. I've plotted all the points from my table of values. Connect all the points the best we can. A smooth curve. See our happy, positive parabola going up, and everything else we know about it. The fourth equation from our quiz, y equaled -3 times x minus 2 quantity squared plus 4, is most definitely in vertex form. We see quantity squared again. Vertex form lets us know that a is -3, h equals -2, and k equals 4. Excuse me, I'm sorry. H is +2. Always remember, h is the opposite of what our equation tells us. Since we know h and k, we know right away that our vertex is at 2, 4. Since we know our vertex is at 2, 4, I also know my axis of symmetry is at x equals 2, straight up and down through our vertex. Now we can move to completing our table of values right away. Again, make sure your vertex is in the middle of your table of values. +2, excuse me. Count up to complete our x values. Excuse me. Count down to complete the other side. Now that we've completed our x values, we can use our pattern shortcut to complete our table. K plus 1a. 4 plus 1 times -3. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 on either side of our vertex. K plus 4a. K is 4 plus 4 times -3. 4 minus 12 is -8. Insert -8 into our table. Now that we've completed our table, we can graph. 3, 1, 1, 1. 0, -8. 4, -8. Our graph is negative. It's going down because a is -1. It's being stretched out 3 times. Try that again. It's a little bit better. You get a graph that looks something like that. Now that we've seen the solutions, hopefully you understand some of the mistakes you made on the quiz on Friday. We are testing on Thursday this week. Please use your time wisely to complete the review and to make sure you are understanding and figuring out what you need to be successful on Thursday. Thank you.